Hello, and welcome everybody to According to Andrew number 75, Powder Mage Book 1, A Promise of Blood. I literally just finished this book today, and I was like, you know what? I gotta get a review done because it was so good that I wanted to share my thoughts on it and tell you why you should definitely read this book. If you're wondering whether or not you should read the book, there you go. There's your review. Read it. It's awesome. Um, but we'll we'll go through some of the points of what I thought was good about the book, and this is going to be spoiler free, so you guys don't have to worry about that. Um, but basically, this book is a set in this fictional universe, fantasy universe, where there's magic, but there's also gunpowder, and it's basically an allegory for the Napoleonic era and the French Revolution and stuff like that happened. The beginning of the book, or like the first book, kind of covers um, the uh, the French Revolution aspect of it, the terror, all that stuff, and kind of the fallout from that, except in this fictional universe and what happens with that. So that's kind of the premise. That's what's going on. And if you're into the Napoleonic era or some of that kind of stuff, or kind of have always wondered what magic would look like with gunpowder, here's a book for you. And I thought it was done excellently, and I really want to. I'm really excited to read the other two books in this series. Um, and I think the instant you read this one, you're gonna be picking up the next two as well. And I'm curious to see what other authors kind of come up with in this space, which has been kind of dubbed flintlock fantasy, which is fantasy with fire or muskets, flintlock type rifles. So um, it's really cool. The I'll kind of touch on the different magic systems. There's three different kind of magic systems. There's your more classic style magic. There's people with basic little things they can do, uh, where they just have like a extra special skill, kind of like uh, autistic kind of, where certain autists, or savant actually is the better example, where they'll like flip through a book and memorize like everything a part of it. Those are kind of the lower level magics that some more normal people have. And then there's the powder mages who can manipulate gunpowder and stuff like that, and it's also kind of an allegory for drugs and stuff like that, because it's addictive. But yeah, it's an amazing page turning adventure. It's like I think 550 pages, and I burned through that in like a week. And it's the literally the fastest I have ever read a book in my life. The first time I sat down, I ripped through like 100 pages, like no problem. Like I just didn't want to set the book down. And I've had books that are good, and I've like wanted to read and stuff like that. But I don't think I've had any book that's been like that much of a page turner. I got to know what happens next, what's going on, and it's not. Uh, well, I guess it's like some of those like movie. I guess Game of Thrones did it a lot, where there'd be like this massive cliffhanger at the end of the thing. There's like aspects of that, but like it's not it's not almost like forced. It's not like they're ending um the scene in like the middle of it, and you're like, oh, what happens next? Because they just cut to something else in the middle of us finding out this dramatic thing. It's like something happens and then it reveals another thing, and so it's like, oh, what's gonna happen next, kind of thing. And I shouldn't say Game of Thrones did that. This is basically the formula that Game of Thrones worked. But man, does it just make you tear through a book? And I'm really sad that I should have bought the second and third book right away, because now I want to read the second book, and I have to wait for it to come in. It's being shipped. Uh, but yeah, so the it was really well written. It wasn't like so. It didn't have any verbiage and stuff like in that in there that made it so complicated that it was hard to read. It wasn't so easy to read, and that it, like the sentence structures were very simple, and kind of it can take you out of it if it's too simple. You kind of lose focus and stop caring and stuff like that. It did a good job in that regard. There weren't like exposition dumps really. Uh, there were aspects of the story that were tied in at logical points that where you got and learned various things, and they tied it into the story in a logical way where these people wouldn't know that, and it makes sense that they would ask it, and then you as the audience get to learn as you're going through this. Like I said, French Revolution, Napoleonic era allegory. If that's what you're looking for, it's gonna be great. It's a high stakes story and a high tempo, high pace story. Um, stuff's happening all the time. Uh, you know, Big nation changing events are happening, and that is going to have a knock on effect to all aspects of life and things like that. So you got to really, um, because of that, it's like one thing after the other is kind of happening, and all of the events that are happening are high stakes, life and death situations, and it makes sense that that kind of stuff is happening. Um, like I said, the writing's really good, really easy to read. The whole story starts with a bang and never really lets up. It's a all gas no brakes kind of story. Barely lets you kind of catch a breath and catch you up with what's going on in the wider world. But that's fine, and it focuses on a smaller section, and I'm guessing it's going to expand as we go through the story. And it gives you enough to kind of understand what's going on, understand the world, understand what's going on in some of the wider world without being too much. It focuses on basically three different areas: the capital, an outpost, and actually it's basically just those two areas. And there's a couple other minor things in the wider national place of Ardo that they're in. So that's really cool. The world building's good. It's not like super like you don't have every little detail, but you don't need every little detail, and it serves the purpose of the story, makes you understand what's going on, and gives you enough there. And it's not let's see, they don't use like he uses cliches in a good way, I guess would maybe be the way of explaining it, or what's the other term for it? Archetypes. He's using various archetypes like he's got like a church and stuff like that, and it's basically an allegory for the Catholic Church and stuff like that. But he uses it in such a way that it helps explain that stuff really well. There's a lot of egalitarian type. A lot of the people have that mentality and a way of thinking that we currently do in our society, but are kind of coming to the end of this Enlightenment era. But these people are very much set in the Enlightenment era and kind of the thinking of that and the consequences of that, and so that kind of comes through in the page, and but it makes sense for the context of the story, so that's great. There's a limited amount of perspectives. I think 4 to 5 at most at any one given time, and I think towards the end it drops to about 3, which is perfect because there's a lot going on, and you don't want to be too far away from any one of those characters for too long before you swing back and kind of are catching up on their story, because there's a lot happening in their story. You don't want to forget details, forget who's who and all that stuff, and so you're able to uh, the story's quick enough that, and the chapters read fast enough that you're back with the other character that you were talking about within 1 or 2 chapters max, and seeing what's going on. And towards the end of the book, it spends about half a chapter on or it splits basically the different perspectives throughout the chapter, so you're not spending too much time separated from these. There's different perspectives. There aren't too many characters being introduced at once. There's a good amount of characters, a good cast of characters, but there isn't too many at any one given time being introduced, so you can't really keep track of them in your head of like, oh my gosh, how many different characters are there? What's this person doing, and why are they doing that? Blah blah blah. The characters are well realized. All their motivations make sense. What they're doing has followed their characters, and he actually wrote a Gamma character absolutely brilliantly. And I basically saw that he was a Gamma, and I was like, this dude has got some stuff going on. Like something's gonna happen with this character, and it played out just like that. I was like, oh, look at that. So you guys can read the book and take a guess at what character that Gamma might be and what happens with that. But it was kind of interesting to see that aspect kind of come in, and I don't know if he's familiar with that, but it was like an exact allegory of what a Gamma would be. It was very interesting. Like I said, good writing. It's kind of so I know people say like action adventure story. There wasn't actually that much adventure. It was more of an action mystery, is how it. So there's lots of stuff happening, lots of action, stuff like that. There's not a lot of time spent of like what's happening on their route from point A to point B. There's a little bit of that in certain aspects of the story, but there's a lot of mystery. People trying to figure out, in the chaos of what's going on and the change that's happening all around people. People are trying to figure out what's going on, and there's they kind of with the actions that they've taken, they've opened up this can of worms, and they're trying to figure out, okay, what is this thing that I just unleashed, and trying to come to grips with that, what that all means, and steps they got to take to figure all that stuff out. So you as an audience is kind of you get to read it and kind of understand and come along in the story and figuring out like, oh, what's going on here? Is this person got secondary motivations? Who are these people really? And you're learning all this stuff and unfolding the mystery, and it's a lot of fun. Mysteries are always fun because you can kind of you get to take guesses at what's happening as you're reading the story and see whether or not you're right or not. And I don't know. For me, that's always a fun aspect of stories when you're reading them. Uh, but yeah, that kind of covers most of that. I guess two maybe negative points are I didn't think the names for the magic systems were very clever. You have privileged, marked, and knacked, or a knack, and it's like okay, and that's fine. They're serviceable. They work, and as you read, you get kind of over it. It's not really a problem, but it was it was kind of the names were very on the nose, and so it's kind of like eh. But you get once you get used to the names, it's not really a big deal. Um, and then also a lot of the names of the main characters are like one letter off, like a normal name, and so I'm not really sure how to pronounce a lot of these things. Like the main character uh, is named Tomas. Uh, it's almost like I should be pronouncing it like Tomas, like the Japanese or not Japanese, the Spanish way of saying Thomas. It's Tamas, Tomas. And so there's a lot of names like that. Like there's, I think, Catherine missing like an H, so it's like Katerine or something like that. It's just like, come on, man. I just want a normal pronouncing name, but I get it. It's you're coming up with names of fantasy world, and it's a different setting. Blah blah blah. All right, it's like the most minor of gripe of all time. It's not going to disrupt your reading at all. Um, but yeah, like I said, it's an amazing book. It's like 500 pages, and it felt like 100. It was such an easy read. I was always looking forward to reading it, and I would have had it done sooner, but I had to work, and I didn't get a ton of time to read it during the weekday. Um, so I burned through like 200 pages last weekend, burned through like 100 pages over the week, and then 200 pages this weekend to finish it in like record time. So if you're looking for a fun, thrilling book, I highly recommend it, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. You're gonna have a good time. Apparently, the audiobook's pretty good, but I haven't listened to it. But if that's more your style, go for it. Anyway, hopefully you guys found this interesting and check this book out, and I hope you guys have a good day. Goodbye.